Every vehicle is just entirely unique. These guys, they're crazy. Just absolutely go as hard as they can go. It's fun for us to be able to give a perspective that the drivers never get to see, or people that are sitting or never got to make it don't get to see. So like essentially you're getting the best view from not even going.
Are you into four-wheeling, camping, and exploring? How about off-road racing like mud bogs, short course wheel-to-wheel racing, or even desert races? Well, you've come to the right place. Welcome to 4x4 Canada podcast. My name is Wes, and I've been four-wheeling since I was 6 weeks old. I have over 20 years experience in 4x4 shops, many more than that in the off-road racing, and a lifetime of exploring the backcountry across Canada. Every week, we bring you a new guest where they give you their perspective on the industry. We discuss everything from four-wheeling, overlanding, every form of off-road racing across this great country, as well as we talk to Canadian manufacturers and 4x4 shops. Just a quick reminder that if you're looking for more episodes, you can find all of our episodes on 4x4canadapodcast.com or your favorite podcast sharing platform. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at 4x4canadapodcast.com. Now let's get to the show. Rocks, mud, jumps, rev limiters. Our guest today creates videos about extreme off-road racing in Alberta and Saskatchewan, as well as four-wheeling in northern Saskatchewan. Darien from PistNbroke, welcome to the 4x4 Canada podcast.
Wes, it's a pleasure you having me here. I really appreciate it, and I'm very excited for this.
So, you've run a YouTube channel called PistNbroke, where you cover some hardcore off-road racing, as well as off-roading in northern Saskatchewan. We'll throw it in the show notes, but people can catch you on YouTube and Facebook as PistNbroke, and that's spelled PistNbroke, all one word. And actually, you're on Instagram too. I forgot to throw that in there.
Yeah, no, I'm on Instagram, and I also do the TikTok thing. I'm not very active on both of those either, but I am on those as well.
Do you dance?
I'm one of the dancers, for sure. That's definitely me.
I have to admit, I'm not on TikTok, but everybody keeps on saying, you got to get on TikTok. You got to get a TikTok for the podcast. And I'm like, isn't it just a bunch of dancing and stuff like that? But apparently not.
It's a pretty wild world on that app. That's for sure. There's a plethora of completely just polar opposites. They'll be dancing on one scroll and you'll do a next thing. And then it's a truck doing a barrel roll down a hill.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out, definitely. So, lately you've been posting videos from hardcore 4x4 racing events in Alberta. It's like Ultra 4x4 or Ultra 4 racing, but it's on steroids, it seems. We're talking nasty mud holes, hardcore obstacles, tough hill climbs. There's a wide assortment of rigs at these events in Alberta and Saskatchewan. You have to be a good at a variety of things. There's Jeeps, buggies, Toyotas, and more. Some are running Rockwell axles, some are running tractor tires. And it also looks like there's a few different classes, small tire and big tire. We'll get into each of the events that you had some great videos on in a bit, but what can you tell us about the basics of the extreme 4x4 racing in Alberta?
Basically, a lot of the things that I've just begun to cover. This is definitely a new sport for me. I'm fairly new into the off-road realm in the racing. There's been a couple friends of mine that have always been in it, but this is the first time that I've actually dabbled in it. And yeah, like you were saying, like there's an assortment of these rigs. They're entirely different. They're the same, but they're entirely unique all in one. Like you said, Rockwell axles, 1 tons. There's people that are running basically stock Dana 44s.
Yep.
It all comes down to the classes and the tire size. For the class size, it's any 44 inches and under is classified as a small tire rig, and 44 and up is a big tire.
44 and under is a small tire.
Isn't that just absolutely wild coming from like just a standard wheeling perspective? Like you're in a small tire class if you're running baby 43s, children tires.
I've got a friend with a Dakota running 40s, and I'm like, I can't imagine him being in the small tire class.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing, and it's all perspective. Like these guys, these tube chassis buggies, like there is like an Ultra 4 one that does participate in the event, but it's a solid axle rig, rear steer, all that kind of good stuff. But like just the dynamic and every vehicle is just entirely unique. Like I just did a video here the other day, and I was talking to him, and the chassis is an Escalade an Escaladed chassis, and it's a complete tube frame buggy. Wild. It's absolutely wild. So
yeah, it's really interesting. Like I say, I've watched some of the videos with the small tired Jeeps, and there's a Jeep TJs or JKs, or there's like tube frames rigs competing against them, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of it comes down to drivers. And then there's also, like I say, there's rear steer. It's just, now these courses are pretty intense. Some of them you're going over, you got hill climbs, you've got mud, you're going over piles of tires, you're going over concrete barriers. It's definitely pretty wild. Let's talk about Mudapalooza just outside of Calgary.
For sure. Yeah, Mudapalooza, that place opened my eyes. I was a little hesitant initially that I was going to travel down because it was a fair drive for me or whatever, but I decided that I was going to go, and like the dynamic at that event that Cody Jensen puts on is truly remarkable. It's so spectator friendly. The spectators basically almost wrap around the entire track for the most part, except back into the hills. So yeah, you've got just a fantastic view, and these guys, they're crazy. Like they just absolutely go as hard as they can go. Everyone wants to be the big winner, right? So there's definitely no shortage of full throttle and just absolutely hitting it everything as hard as they can. The great thing with Mudapalooza is it's a really dedicated driver's course. There's guys that have been riding that place for years, and you have to pick your lines because there's 50, I think Kyle's like a 58-inch tire on his rig. And there's spots like, yeah, you could get hung up going through the mud pit at Mudapalooza. The skidder got stuck trying to pull out a rig. Like the skidder. So like when a skidder running absolutely ridiculous tires is getting buried and these trucks are barreling through it, it's a sight to be seen for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And Mudapalooza, they end up going, like you say, back into the trees now a bit. And one of the things I really like about your videos is the multiple perspectives on it. So you've got your highlight reels, which is absolutely awesome, where you're packing all this action into one video, but you've also got some videos where you're following a racer around the course and you've got multiple perspectives on it. So I assume you're on a quad or something like that and following along.
Yeah, for sure. And I can't take all the credit for that. So what's happening here is I partnered up with CMD Films, and she's been attending these events for ages. Like she's one of the OG people that have been at Mudapalooza, and she was actually the one that coerced me to come down because we linked up at Extreme Mudfest in Cold Lake. And so we decided that the best way for us and for everyone to try and experience these events is, well, you have to 100% collaborate with one another. Got her running on quad with the camera. We've got GoPros and rigs, and I'm running drone. We've got GoPros set up in the field and on the trees and some in rigs.
Yeah, it was really neat because you can follow the racer around the course, and you can see them panning across, and then all of a sudden they go into the trees, and then as a GoPro mounted on the vehicle, and you can hear the people, the co-driver, sharp left or stuff like that, and then boom, you pop up into a drone shot, and then you're back out onto the open where everybody can see, and how you guys are mixing it is really good.
I really appreciate that, and it's a unique perspective, and the biggest thing, and it's fun for us, especially as like content creators, that's what we'll call ourselves. It's fun for us to be able to give a perspective that the drivers never get to see, or people that are sitting or never got to make it don't get to see. So like essentially you're getting the best view from not even going there. So you're able to see the show so much better from all the filming from not even being there, just because of the fact that all the time that goes into all the cuts and the edits and piecing it all together and working these runs. It's very satisfying, but it's definitely laborsome.
Yeah, no doubt. And I imagine the feedback that you're getting from the racers themselves is got to be really great feedback, and it's got to be a motivating factor, right? When you hear these great comments that people are saying on them.
It's super rewarding, like something like that, especially when, these guys are going out. And that's the biggest thing is generally with a lot of my videos and stuff that I've done in the past, I won't generally post as much of one thing as I have been doing on this specific event. But it's almost owed to these guys and gals that are out there absolutely thrashing on their rigs. I don't have that hard of a job. Like realistically, when I'm doing this, I'm not breaking my stuff. I may lose a drone. I may get a camera will get wrecked or whatever. But at the end of the day, like they're putting their labor and the love, time, and money building these rigs to go out and just absolutely thrash on them for their own and other people's entertainment. So yeah, a few hours at the computer to stitch together a video so they can see their run is definitely worth it in my book.
Yeah, for sure. Hopping back to the rigs, what are some of your favorite rigs at these events? I know you're friends with everybody, and it's hard to say just a few of them, but
there's always a favorite. Now, that's the thing is like with any wheeling and with any off-roading and any rig whatsoever, everyone's going to have their own preference. Everyone's going to have their own taste, but everyone always loves the biggest and baddest. Like you have to, like the biggest tire, the loudest exhaust. It's a no-brainer. Like when people start looking like that's a cool one just because it's big and it's menacing. But it's for me to say a personal favorite. I do have an affinity for Jake Brazier in the little blue race truck. Now he's just an absolute lunatic. He runs the small tire class in that truck, and the dude's on leaf springs, and he's got a slinky for a spine, and he will hit anything as hard as he can just because he's a very entertaining driver. Devin Villeneuve has just got an absolutely insane twin turbo rear steer big tire buggy that just is the fastest thing around. Granted, he's a crazy good driver, and it's been proven because he's have it qualified, gone into the States and done the same thing, just taken names. So there's so many. I'd list them all. A guy that I go wheeling with on the rocks, Jeff Eat. We will go wheeling in the range, rock crawling, and then he'll load his rig up and he'll take it to the races, and he's undefeated. Like so you can't really pick and I could there's just so many that's
a hard question,
but I honestly have to say probably my favorite rings, and this just goes back to me being appreciative of people that wheel and get into the sport and do whatever. It's basically stalker stuff, like a little bit beefed up Trust Dana 44 on some 36s or 38s. Those are my favorite rigs. Because the big rigs, the big guys, the fast ones, the twin turbo, the rear steer, the custom cage buggies, those guys have already established themselves in the sport, and that's obviously what they want to do. But it's the stalker rigs that someone has built their truck and they're like, I want to try that. That's my rig because that's someone else getting into the sport that's going to continue it on down the road.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's a couple videos I watched where some of these guys in, we'll call the small tire class, like you say, they're running 38s on a Jeep, and you can tell the guy's a good driver, and the vehicle's actually set up quite well. There's a few of them I saw that the suspension seemed to be set up quite well, and they were flying along, and they're putting their time and diligence into it, and they're just...
Yeah, and you got it. Hats off to that. And there's obviously a class, whereas I feel more comfortable because I don't want to have full internal Overton Rockwells. That's one that I can't afford. The 700 horsepower, 800 horsepower, 1,000 horsepower engine, the braking, and all that comes into effect. And people that just are able to just run their stuff and have fun, absolutely. Get after it.
And it doesn't really matter on the class or the vehicle, as we saw in the Mudapalooza videos, that any of them can break or any of them can roll. Any of them can get hung up in those tire pits with the barriers and that. And
perfect. Sorry to interrupt you, but perfect case in point of that was Devin Villeneuve. He's got that shredded lettuce, that tube chassis buggy, and like he absolutely did this crazy 4-wheel drive burnout on the top of the tire pit trying to get through, and everything was good. The day before that mud hole, he absolutely hydroplaned across the top of it. There was no way, like the drone couldn't keep up with him. Like he was gone. He was on that nitrous instantly, and that 47-inch TSL boggers, like a UTV bogger they call them, it's got a 3.5-inch bogger lug on it, and they're a sticky compound. He just chewed it. I was like, oh, this is game over. And that's what it was actually his demise in the Ironman run, is he couldn't make it through that hole. So you just never know.
Yeah, exactly. The highlight video from your Mudfest in Cold Lake, Alberta this summer, that was a pretty intense one as well, too. It looks like they had some hardcore off-road trails, and then they also had some mega truck style stuff. What can you tell us about that event?
That event was absolutely awesome. That's the first year that Extreme Mudfest had been in Cold Lake. So that was a new grounds to them. That is a new grounds to them. So from my understanding, it's still going to be continued to be developed, pursued, and made better. And for the amount of time that they had to make that track this year, I think like a couple weeks. And that's what they were able to get. Like, it was remarkable. It was absolutely remarkable. And the track itself, like, I can definitely see once they're able to put more time in, it's going to get so much better. What they did different at that one is they would actually have guys racing head to head. So you would generally have a big tire rig and a small tire rig racing head to head. And then it was usually the fastest of those classes would get pit off. So the fastest big tire would race with this fastest small tire. Each time's accumulated, and then you just continue on through your bracket or whatever. But it was really neat. It was really neat. A lot of fast trucks, a lot of really cool trucks. And then they had the super trucks, the mega trucks, like #Kill and Flyboy, and all those guys were there. And so they're doing J-hook racing. So basically they would start off head to head, fly down the track, hit the berm, and come over the big tabletop. Generally it happened most of the time side by side, which is crazy.
Yeah, we were talking to Anna and Dave Davies a couple weeks ago from BC, and they've got two of the mega trucks, and they went out to Saskatchewan. I don't know if it was Proverse or one of the events out in Saskatchewan this year.
Probably FRCC.
That's what it was. And they said they had an absolute blast because that was their first time running J track. And so, it looks a lot more fun than their regular straight line stuff. So.
It adds just the J-hook itself, and like that, it just adds such another dynamic to something that's already quite exciting for everybody. Just who would have thought a 180-degree turn would be like a pace setter or a trending thing, but it's so exciting for the racers themselves. And then on the other end of it, the spectators get a bit more. Yeah. You know what I mean? So the spectators get more to watch, the drivers get more. So then it's not just who's got the highest horsepower, who gets the launch. It's you got to be able to turn your rig too. You got to line yourself up. So it's definitely a more driver orientated thing for sure.
And like you say, a lot of times it looked like they're coming across that tabletop at the same time just to add that extra.
It's awesome.
Thrill for
like thousands of horsepower coming over and just banging rev limiter in the sky. You know what I mean? You can't beat that.
Yeah.
That makes every grown person feel like a little kid again watching stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's just takes you back.
Yeah. It's funny when we're talking, Leanna said when she starts her truck up, she's running 1,600 horsepower. And she said that half the time is the thrill right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. They have I think it was 1,000 horsepower ranch, correct?
Yes, they do. 100 horsepower ranch.
100, okay.
Yeah, 100 horsepower ranch.
Awesome.
Yeah. So what other events are like that out in Alberta and Saskatchewan in regards to these? And I don't even know what to call them. They're not a Ultra 4 style race, but some of the vehicles could compete, but they're not a mega truck either. They're just, I call it extreme 4x4 racing. I don't know what else to call it.
It's Havoc style racing. So it's a Havoc style race. So basically, man-made obstacles or natural obstacles, and you get pitted, you get your rig pitted against it, and it's whoever's fastest. Yep. In Canada, here in Western Canada. And like I say, I'm fairly new to this, so I don't have all the information and whatever, but there is races down in Idaho, which is the Mountain Mafia Entertainment or whatever. They have They have a website on Facebook, which basically promotes all these events down in northern Idaho. And the Havoc qualifier is generally the fastest person at an event will get a qualifying spot in these races down in the States, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big push, is where like it's truly remarkable how all these rigs in Canada have progressed. It used to be only basically stateside where you see these really crazy buggies and crazy trucks, and now Canada is really starting to take over. They're really showing out in performances against racing these Americans that have been doing it a little bit longer. You know what I mean? And putting in some cases putting the hurt on them, actually winning.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of really good trucks and Jeeps or buggies, whatever you want to call them, Alberta. And then there's also some stuff happening in BC as well. In Quesnel, there's a good little club there that they're working hard to get that kind of events going. So I think to me, it's one of the more exciting styles. I come from desert racing and short course racing background. To me, this is more exciting than, say, mud drags or mud bogs kind of idea. But it's a combination of everything, right?
It is, absolutely. But it also goes hand in hand, because that was a really cool thing about Extreme Mudfest in Cold Lake, is they had sand railed dragsters going, and then they had the mega trucks up top doing their thing. They had the CMRO quads doing the oval water pit stuff, racing each other. They had the mud drags. They had all of it. So it was just a perfect combination of everything just getting pitted together and then just working. It was an awesome event. I'm definitely looking forward to next year for sure.
Yeah, that's the way to go, because then you get a bit of a mixture as well, right?
Yeah, and like they did such a great job with that, and having like all the spectator stuff, everything that it doesn't matter what your flavor, what you like. If you're there to support your buddies that are doing the mud drags, or crazy fast sand rail dragsters, or your buddies on a quad and he's got the crush locks and he's got them all skinned out and he's racing doing that. The little ones, they had a monster truck, the big monster truck with all the seats in the back, giving rides around. So it was a super, super great event for absolutely everybody. Later on in the evenings, every night they had concerts, different bands were playing, live concerts, live venues. So yeah, it was amazing.
Sounds like Cold Lake, Alberta is the place to be.
It's definitely going to be next August for sure. I think that's going on their Facebook page and having a look. That's the tentative plan for next year is to Extreme Mudfest 23. So August next year for sure is going to be a definite spot for people to go check out and have some fun.
So another place to get good information about these kinds of events, I think, is the Axlebusters group on Facebook.
Yeah.
Kyle's done a pretty good job there with
Kyle.
That group seems to be quite involved with all this.
Kyle is the Axlebusters race team and Kyle Walton himself are such a huge part of all of that. All of this, whether it's Mudapalooza, Extreme Mudfest, they're supporters of the races down in Idaho. That's one thing, like speaking with Kyle, and he lives and breathes this. Everything that he does goes back into this. And I got to say, like, I told him at Jensen's at Mudapalooza, I was like, my hat, I've got so much admiration and respect for you, because after he's done racing, after he's done whatever, he's got his truck with 58-inch tires packed full of kids. And he's driving them around, right? And then kids are hopping out and more kids are piling in, and he's just back and forth. And that's just giving it to the next generation and just making kids day. Yeah, Axlebusters is a huge, huge supporter of all this stuff. And I don't think necessarily it would probably be where it is without the dedicated guys and in that team.
Yeah, definitely. Kyle's on my list of people to talk. Really want to have him on board early next year and have a good conversation with him for sure.
He's got, when you said which rig's your favorite, that's going in there. Downhole money, that's definitely one. And he's got himself a new power plant for it this year too. So that it's a big horsepower engine going in there. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see him lining up and doing some racing next year. It's going to be definitely exciting.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. He is on my list, and I will get a hold of him in the new year. And I want to sit down and talk to him because, like I say, he, from my understanding, has been a driving force in this extreme off-road racing in Alberta, for sure.
Absolutely. He's a huge part of it. And then the BC Snow Wheelers, the Villeneuve boys, and all those guys, Luke Pittman. And yeah, like they're huge. They're fast. They love what they do, and they put on a hell of a show, and they've got remarkable rigs to get everyone excited about. So it's a win-win.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll put in the show notes, we'll put some links that people can check out. Obviously your YouTube page, etc. But we'll also put a link to the Axlebusters group and the Cold Lake, Alberta, and that, just so people can get some more information. So
yeah, absolutely. If we could get the Mudfest and Mudapalooza. That's the one thing with Cody Jensen, Mudapalooza, when I reached out to him. The races this year were in September, and I reached out, and he's tentatively, I'm not 100% sure. So that's the best way to find out if anyone does want to be able to attend these events and see him, is just to keep up on the Facebook page and have a peek there.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll throw those in the show notes for sure. So your videos not only cover off-road racing, they have a little bit, because that's late or August and September. That's where you were, and you got a lot of coverage to get out there. But before that, you're a wheeler.
Yeah.
And I have to apologize. I've said a couple times in podcasts, I think I was talking to Teddy from the Unwinding Roads, or G from BC or something like that.
Yeah.
And we're talking about how many people or how many YouTubers there is in BC, just because it's like the prettiest, most beautiful province in Canada.
Oh, it breaks heart.
And it's not, we're living in Saskatchewan or something like that.
Yeah,
so I have to apologize.
It's all good.
Is there any 4x4 YouTubers in Saskatchewan? And we're like, no, they're running through wheat fields or something. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys that run a very successful combining page, but other than that.
But you're in northern Saskatchewan, and that's like a whole nother country kind of
Yeah,
idea, right? So
it's definitely different, being that I'm in kind of the boreal forest area, the more lush, beautiful. Not we do have a lot of plain land and prairie stuff, but it's not just, you can't watch that dog run like like they say, you can't watch him hit over that one hill and then he's gone.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it looks like North Saskatchewan. From looking at your videos and what little I do know about North Saskatchewan, basically it looks like rocks, muskeg, and water.
That's
Pretty
basically. I think we could shut the podcast on here. I think we covered Saskatchewan in a nutshell right there. Yeah, Northern Sask, like Saskatchewan itself is actually fairly interesting, just because of the fact that we do have a variety of different terrains that a guy can go wheeling on if you so desire. There's never a moment where I'm not even just driving in my regular half ton, looking over and seeing a dirt trail or a trail somewhere, and I wonder where that goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not as scenic and it's not as breathtaking as all those lucky guys in British Columbia have. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so enthralled with BC, and that's definitely a real stake where I want to go and visit and do a lot more of unfilming and that sort of thing. But Sask does.
If you ever get up this way, let me know. We'll get you up in some good spots.
Oh, for sure. I've got plans. I've got big plans. But Sask does have a lot of natural beauty, where it's a lot of natural lakes. It's not the glacier lakes. It's not the glowing green and blue and emerald guys are accustomed to, but just little hidden gems where it's like you can go wheeling through the tree line in the bush for hours upon hours and just stumble across this a perfect untouched landscape, which is, it's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
So you've got that aspect to it. And then we have a lot of sand as well. So you can do like whoops and dune style kind of stuff, not the big hills or nothing like that, but more fast paced wheeling speed sort of thing. And then obviously up north in Larange and that area, a bunch of good buddies of mine, the Larange Off Road crew, they wheeling on the Canada Shield. Just that's a surreal experience up there for sure. It's like walking on grip tape. It's just
okay.
Yeah, it's just so sticky. The first time I went, it absolutely blew my mind. I was like, "There's no way my Jeep is going to drive up that ledge," and then just up it goes. It's pretty neat. Yeah.
So almost like the rocks in Moab, how they're very sticky. So same
exactly.
idea.
Yeah, like in the Moab rock, like that's the Slick Rock crew and all those guys down there. It's like how are they breaking axles? Like they're driving on rock, not doing nothing, and all of a sudden an axle's broken. Once you actually get on to rock that actually has that kind of porous compound to it, and your tire actually bites in, it makes sense.
Yeah. Once you see it, yeah. So you guys have got looks like some pretty fun wheeling up there. From your videos that I've seen, like I say, it seems like a lot of water, but there's, like you say, a mixture of terrain up there. And you've got some pretty interesting vehicles up there too.
There's a couple unique ones. Like the northern guys, like the rock guys, they all locked up. Basically, everyone's got lockers and stuff in all their rigs. But yeah, it's a different kind of wheeling. Like it's when you go to Larange and you do the rocks and that sort of thing, it's sharp ledges. You really have to be a driver. You really have to be able to pick your line and see what you're doing, because it can go south for you pretty quick. Just anything else. I'm not a stranger. I would actually hold the title for the only guy to actually roll up there, and so I ended up rolling my Jeep up there. But yeah, there's definitely a wide assortment of rigs for sure.
Yeah, definitely. One of the ones I noticed was that white box on wheels.
Yeah, the white box on wheels, and I'm assuming that you're talking about the Sherp.
Yeah,
the Sherp. Yeah, the Sherp is basically, that's a friend of mine, Dave Ostapot. He runs a very, very large YouTube channel as well called Osta Cruiser. He comes from the UTV spectrum, but yeah, he's got that Sherp, and honestly, it is a cheat code for the trail. It's not even fair. It's not like we went out, we had a good ride, built Toyotas, 42, I think they're both 42-inch tires. The one friend of mine, he has a LS2 in it. It's a paddle shift, and he is just absolutely tearing that truck up, just to the boards, 25-foot roosters over top, everything, right? And he's stuck. And then the Sherp just plops on right beside us. Because it floats, it does everything, it does the trail, and yeah.
Yeah. So for the listeners that don't know what the Sherp is, or the Sherpa, it's basically a box on wheels, but it's made so that it can pretty much float, from my understanding, right?
It does. It floats, it ice breaks, it does absolutely everything, and it's just wild to see it, because I think they're like 70 some inch tires. Like they're absolutely massive tires on this thing, and they basically touch the front tires, basically touch the rear tires. There's not much of a gap in between. Yeah, no, you can air it down to 0.5 of a pound of air pressure in those tires, and it'll crawl over snow and float through muskeg and overtop water and break through ice, and it's wild.
For articulation, like it's got nothing, right? From understanding.
It's all in the tire. It's all in the tire. So
but it's also meant to be, it's built for that, for going across, whether it be the Arctic or like that. That's where it was built for. So it makes sense that it kicks ass. But
yeah, it's those Russians. They designed the Sherp, that, and they've got some pretty wild stuff. You see some of those rigs that are coming out of Russia, and you know what those guys are building over there. It's pretty, like I've seen like videos of guys, it looks like just a standard quad on 80-inch tires, and it's a special trailer to frickin' drive the thing on. It's absolutely crazy. It's a different world over there.
Let's hop back down to that then. You have been building a wicked side-by-side, monster side-by-side. Let's talk about that, because I watched a few videos on it, and I'm like, that thing's a beast.
Hopefully. We'll see what happens when it's all said and done, walking into untested, uncharted waters with that one. But yeah, it's basically just a run-of-the-mill stock Arctic Cat Wildcat 1000 side-by-side, and I put exhaust and a light bar on it, and there we go. But no, it's just been a natural,
more than that, but
yeah, it's just been a natural progression of just anything like that yourself, Wes, is like when you get a rig or you get something, it's like slow accumulation of continually adding to it and continually changing it. And I got to the point where, like down in the States, a lot of the guys like portal gear lifts. That's what I've got, one of the components on there. It's really big in the States. And what they like to do is they seem to just hijacker their rigs. So they're like 10 feet in the air, and then they got 48-inch, 55, just crazy tires on them. And I wanted to do something a little bit different, just because of the fact that I ended up starting to break a lot of parts. And this is where you always break, upgrade, do something different. Yeah. And it seemed when I got tired of breaking transmissions and differentials in half. And so finally I was like, I got to do something different. I looked over, I had a spare case out of a Jeep sitting there, and I'm like, this is interesting. I wonder if I might be able to make that work. So I ended up deciding that I was going to cut the back end of the machine off, cut it off, made a coupler, got the 242 transfer case mocked up to the CVT Wildcat engine, and then ended up putting a full-size Ford 8.8 independent differentials in it, because going to need a bigger diff. 8.8's a really good, strong diff. So ended up putting full-size diffs in it, stretched it, and currently I think it's about 134-inch wheelbase, 84.5 inches wide, and sitting on 36-inch tires with the portal gear lift. It's got a healthy like 28 or 29 inches of ground clearance underneath of it right now with 36s. So hopefully once it's all said and done and I get it wrapped up, the concept's there. It's just to see if it works.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's real. I'm really excited to see this, because like you say, you see those ones down in the States where you go to some of the big mud fests down there and they're running the big ones, but they don't really seem to have any articulation. They don't really seem to be, they're not just jacked up and just a party vehicle kind of idea.
Really. That's the thing, is like a lot of the really skyjacked ones that are just so high out, like they're limited strapped down, they're tight as they can go, like there's no suspension movement. Whereas I'm still like 100%, I've got all my articulation that I can possibly want, because I didn't want to have a one-trick pony. I wanted to have a Swiss Army knife that did absolutely everything. And just going through a mud hole doesn't do it for me. So I want to take it to the L'Orange with the boys, and I want to wheel on the rocks. You know what I mean? I want to go cruising down the trails. And I'm actually hoping, if it all works out, that I'll be able to race it against some of these guys next year in probably the small tire class.
But you have to admit, when's the last time you saw a side-by-side on 36-inch tall tires? So just the coolness factor alone is going to be
it's awesome. It is awesome. And then how it's actually kind of geared, the 36s are going to be my testing bed. It's going to be geared. It's going to be set. So I should be able to run about a 42. So I'll have a 42 on there. Possibly. We'll see if my bubblegum welding will hold up and if I can go to a bigger tire from there. But yeah,
it's interesting for sure. So
it's gonna be neat, and that's something like that's where I come from, like for the most part, and that's what got me into off-roading in general was the UTV quad side by side genre. Buddies of mine, we all had side by sides and we wheeled, and my one friend, he's like, hey, you should get a Jeep. And it's like, I don't want a Jeep. They're so slow. They're whatever. And I was like, whatever. Got into the Jeep and it's like windows, heat, air conditioning.
Yep.
What have I been doing my entire life? Like I had it wrong the entire time. It's more durable. It's more comfortable. You can haul stuff.
Did you
with
say
it.
a Jeep? You said a Jeep was durable?
Currently, mine is sitting on the trailer with a blown transmission. So, yeah. In retrospect, compared to a UTV, whether it be a Can-Am, Polaris, Arctic Cat, CF Moto, yes, they are definitely more durable and cheaper to fix.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeep parts are inexpensive for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. When you start getting like the Toyota stuff, they're guys, things are quite expensive.
Yeah. My good old Toyota tax, right?
Yeah. It's the luxury tax. I think that's what they call it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Winch first or lockers first?
Oh, I think personally, your best bet if you're going to hop into a rig, and the proof is just, you don't need the biggest and the baddest. There is a great analogy I seen that it came to race cars, and the slowest car on the track is still faster than the fastest car on jack stands. So
there you go.
When it comes down to a rig, and obviously it's all comes down to money, but link and lock your rear, get a limited slip or even an open diff up front, get yourself a Smitty built winch. Stuff's relatively cheap, but very durable now. And yeah, you're laughing. That'll get you out wheeling and that'll take you so many places.
Yeah, I've often said that everybody should drive their vehicle stock for a year. So they learn their vehicle, learn the capabilities, learn how to drive. And then once you put the bigger tires on, a lot of times you're hitting harder obstacles, but a lot of times you almost forget how to drive sometimes.
Yeah, like if you've got a vehicle on like a 32 or a 33-inch tire, and then you got your buddy that's in a 40, and he's just going to roll over everything.
Exactly.
He's not going to really have to try. Whereas it's going to make you a better driver with the smaller tire, because you're actually going to have to look where you can put your rig to climb that obstacle to get where you need to go. And then once you're able to progress from there and you get that big, crazy rig, that's where it falls back to like all these racers that go to Jensen's and Luza and Extreme Mudfest. They're drivers. It's not just a crazy rig that these guys hop in and just hit the pedal and the rig does all the work. They're drivers, and that's what gets you there.
Yeah. Yeah. They've moved up through the ranks in the years and got their experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So going back to the wheeling in Saskatchewan, if people are looking to get out and get involved or meet new people in northern Saskatchewan, is there any recommendations on any clubs or Facebook groups or anything like
100%,
that?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm a member and really good friends with boys from the L'Orange Off Road group. They're obviously located out of L'Orange, Saskatchewan, and they do actually some events. They do a crawl in the fall, generally in September, that sort of thing. So they will accommodate depending on the amount of rigs, but they will put on an event for people to come. There is stipulations on your rig. It does have to have certain size tires and locker and whatever, just because it is some interesting terrain. And then, the Northeast Off-Road boys, they're a great group of guys. Andrew and all them. Joel, they're just an amazing group of guys. They love and breathe off-roading. Another good group to look up. And other than that, I think, I don't know the name of it. I'd have to look on Facebook or something, but an Off-Road Association, I believe, is another one where it's just a friendly group of people that just like to wheel.
Yep.
Yeah,
and throw some of those in the show notes as well too. So
for sure,
if anybody's looking to get into some wheeling in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't hesitate to reach out to me or whatever. There's people around the northern area. Like there's so many great trails and that are easily accessible. Just people don't know them. It's simple because 90% of them honestly are snowmobile trails that we utilize in the summer and clean up and maintain. Yeah, for sure.
Here's lots of good fishing up there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's yeah. If that's your foray, that's a great thing. That's actually one thing that a lot of my buddies will do is they'll hop in their rig and then they'll wheel to a little lake and they've got their little fishing boat or whatever there, and then they go fishing for the day and just pickerel and having the time, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely.
Yeah, I think if I get up that way, I'll just have to bring the kayak and do some fishing up there for sure.
Oh, for sure. It's beautiful.
How big are your mosquitoes there?
Some will move a horse. Some will move a horse. I think honestly, on my property, I've got the world's records for mosquitoes because I swear some of them, like they bite you and it's like a freaking baseball. It just hit your arm. It's unreal. But luckily, the season is relatively short where they're terrible. But yeah, no, we definitely got some gooders here. That's for sure. One of my least favorite things about Sask is definitely the mosquitoes.
Yeah. Yeah. We had it. I was going to say we had it rough this year in BC, but probably not as bad as you guys did.
No, but yeah, that's the other thing. Like we were touching on there before is like in British Columbia, like a lot of the guys that have just so many beautiful opportunities there is you can't beat. Like I hate to sound a little bit biased, even though I am from Sask, but I did my first mountain trip here with the boys just earlier this year, and we were just outside of Rocky Mountain House, and nothing like Tumbler Ridge or anything like that, but it was eye-opening, and this is my deal. This is my jam. This is something that's been calling me. Yeah, I 100% want to get out to BC and spend some time in your guys' neck of the woods.
I think there's something to be said. I think there's certain beauty in every province in Canada. Like we are so lucky. Saskatchewan, you've got lots of great fishing lakes up there and some good terrain up there. Manitoba, same thing with Manitoba. And Northern Ontario is just absolutely gorgeous. And then you get out east is just stellar, right? I definitely want to spend some time up in the Yukon and Northwest Territories. So I think overall we are just so lucky. And a lot of people tend to go away and travel to the States or travel around the world, but they don't realize how much beauty that we do have in Canada.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I remember it would have been like 13 years ago. I did Great Alaskan Highway. I went up all the way through up into BC, the Northwest, and I did Alaska and came all the way back down. And it was just like, I'm so happy that I got to experience so many new places in Canada that I had no idea that existed. Like the sand dunes in the Yukon, you know what I mean? It's just like, what? This is mind blowing, but what? It's so, yeah, there's definitely so much. So there's so many things to be had and to be seen in Canada itself. And like I say, one thing I definitely would like to do is spend a little bit more time in BC, do some wheeling up there. I know there's some guys there that have opened up some invites. And then the same thing is I'd love to go east as much as I'm not a big city guy or anything like that. But yeah, like you said, Northern Ontario is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. And even New Brunswick, Newfoundland, any of those places in the fall time, just killer.
Yeah.
So we're so lucky as Canadians. I think a lot of us don't realize how lucky we are that we can.
And 100%. And I want to say something about a video that you had actually just posted here the other day. And it goes to show you just like the perspective and natural beauty of something. That video you posted of the girl and her dog, traveling girl and her dog. And that just the vlogging with just ambient sounds of what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely remarkable. I love that. That was spectacular.
That's probably one of the best videos that I've seen in a while, to be honest with you. I watched it like 3 times before I posted it. I'm like, I got to spread this. So what we're talking about, if you go to the 4x4 Canada podcast page on Facebook, I posted a couple days ago a video of basically this lady and her dog and her Jeep. And there's an ambience. You get a little bit of some of the birds, but they got a little bit of music mixed in. And I believe it's her husband or boyfriend or whatever did a lot of the video work. But what they did is just, there's no talking. There's no chatter. It's just a woman camping with her dog.
Yeah. You're not saying, all right, we're going to cook supper here, get a fire going. It's literally tearing up the birch and just the sound of that birch bark getting shredded between the fingers and getting pressed into the fire, and then the click of the propane and then the sauce and everything caramel. And it's remarkable what they did and how they were able to execute that. And it was great.
Yeah, like I say, that's definitely one of my favorite videos that I've seen in a while. I had a thought and it's gone.
That's every day of my life.
Wait until you hit 50, man.
Yeah, there you go. I'm already struggling, so I'll be doomed for sure. That's the funny thing. We were just talking about the side-by-side, and a friend of mine, so when are you going to get back on it? What's the deal? And I was like, well, I got to start working on it here soon. And he said, so what's next on it for you? And I was like, I actually don't know. I'm going to have to go watch my last YouTube video to see where I stopped off to figure out what the hell I was doing and go from there.
That's awesome.
So I'm not doing it for anyone else's entertainment or enjoyment. It's just to catalog, for me to remember and continue on from there. So
yeah, even a lot of with the videos though too, right? I was talking to Teddy from Unwinding Roads, who does a lot of YouTube stuff here in BC. And it's not necessarily, yeah, I do it to get my videos out there and exposure and stuff like that. But he goes, a lot of it is so that my kids can look back and share these experiences. When you and I were kids, there was cameras and we look back, or there's VHS camcorders or Super 8s or whatever, right? And YouTube has brought that up to that next level. And it's a great way of documenting what we're going through. And even with your race videos, right? People can go back to these in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And just, they actually had wheels and they weren't flying.
Well, that's and that's the great thing about YouTube is because it's a search engine. So something that you post today could be very well looked at a few years, 5, 10, 15 years from now. And it's like you're saying, going back and looking at things retrospectively, it's funny, and it's going to be interesting to see just the natural progression of these rigs. See it in every vehicle. Oh, that's different. It's never the same. So it's neat to watch. It's neat to see that sort of thing. I go back and I
remember when coilovers and bypasses came out. That's aging myself.
Yeah. No, but yeah, I remember obviously being size perspective, but I remember being just a little boy in my dad's 1974 Bronco one. 35 or 36 inch tires, and the thing was a monster truck.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That was unbelievable how big that truck was. The biggest truck on the road, sitting on his knee, 4 years old, doing the steering wheel. And yeah, now 35s, that comes stock on a Wrangler.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, technology just blows me away. Like I say, you're looking at your trucks that had 33s and they're big, up to when coilovers and bypasses started to come into the desert racing and short course racing. And I remember trying to figure out how the heck these bypasses worked and how you adjust them to make, because there was no YouTube back then. And in Canada, we were some of the first people running bypasses, and you didn't phone up to Rancho and say, how do I adjust these things or whatever. So I can only imagine what's going to be in 20 years. The electric vehicles is a whole nother thing too, right?
It is. I'm really torn on that.
Me too.
I understand that that could be an entirely new conversation, but Dakar and anything else, it's not the same without having that engine screaming 9,000 RPM, and you need that in racing. I personally think you need that in racing. You need that engine.
Can you imagine going to Mudpalooza and them all being electric vehicles and there's no sound?
Yeah, there was. They did have RC car shootouts at Mudpalooza as well, but there was some electric vehicles there, but yeah, the big course stuff, like it couldn't. I could never see that. You need that roar, you need that thunder. And that's the big part of motorsport itself, is just like that thrill and excitement. Going back to the 100 horsepower ranch, she fires up her 1600 horsepower truck and she just feels that excitement because of this. I'm piloting this monster.
Exactly, right? And I think it's going to be really interesting, and it really intrigues me. I'm not necessarily a fan of it being forced on us like it is going to be. And I think the technology is getting better every year, but there's just something about having that noise, like you say. So it's like an electric street rod, right?
Yeah, it's sure cool if you know that someone. Absolutely. The time and whatever, you have to appreciate everyone else's passion. And there's a lot of work that goes into stuff like that. But as a motorsport, like enthusiast, like Ken Block running the Gamacan, he had the Unicorn, just that absolutely stunner all-wheel drive, multi-thousand horsepower Ford Mustang. And now he's with Audi and he's in an electric vehicle. And it's like the stuff he's doing is unbelievably cool, but it's not shooting flames out of the hood.
Exactly. And with these guys, like the Rivians, they're running an electric motor at each wheel. So the torque is right there at that wheel. It's instant.
Oh, yeah.
And like I say, part of it is exciting to me, but it's just I can't imagine going to Mudpalooza and having all electric vehicles.
I would rather sound really fast than be really fast.
Well, that's the story of my racing career.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So that was actually one thing I wanted to ask you about. Is I'd seen the other day that you had posted a throwback retro desert rig. Was your jam? Was that your vehicle back in the day, or what was that?
That one wasn't mine. It was somebody else's, but I was involved in the desert racing back in. I grew up in the off-road. My my first word was Bronco.
Oh,
And I was 6 weeks old when I went on my first 4x4 trip. My parents actually met on a 4x4 trip, and they were involved in clubs a little bit through the 70s, and then it died out a little bit, but we got into racing, or they raced for a number of years. And then when I graduated high school, went and got my parts person certificate, and I went and worked at a four-wheel drive shop. And I did four-wheel drive shops for 15, 20 years,
oh wow.
something like that. So I was quite involved with four-wheel drive shops. So with the four-wheel drive, working in the four-wheel drives, I was also involved with the racing and stuff like that. So I thought it would be neat to show some of these throwbacks of these older rigs that
I
used to
love
race, right?
nostalgic stuff, man. Don't
Me
get me
too.
wrong. I like the new modern stuff, like Tim Cameron's builds and like those tube chassis buggies and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, wild. Like the new Dakar, the Robbie Gordon's, the Unicorn 4-wheel drive truck, and like the Extreme Predator 4x4 build out of Australia and stuff like that. Like remarkable stuff, like feats of engineering and just very cool. But like the nostalgic stuff that what actually kicked it all off, that fires me up just as much, and that excites me.
Yeah.
I love seeing that sort of thing.
Yeah, me too. I have a passion for the history on the 4x4 stuff, even before all the stuff before my time. But one of the reasons for actually starting this podcast is a lot of the people, like my parents' age, a lot of the people that they raced with or went four-wheeling with, they're all getting older and they're starting to pass away in that. We just lost a good friend of ours, Al, recently, and I'm hoping to get some of our elders on the show so we can talk about the stuff that happened back 60s and 70s and the 80s, and just to save some of these stories.
Absolutely.
Just like you and I are talking now, you think 40 years in the future, somebody will be able to listen to this and listen to conversation and us talking about wheeling. So I really want to get some of our elders back on here and we can talk about some of the old days, right? So
what a wild time it would be. Like what an absolute mind trip that would be. Like to go back to the early 70s and experience and do what these guys and gals did is absolutely ridiculous. And like I say,
my parents, they'd drive the Bronco to the race it, and then drive it home. And then, so there's no trailers and all these other things, right?
Yeah, just going out, beating on your daily and driving it home, and good, right? Because not everyone has a dedicated rig or a dedicated race rig. You want to get into it? Absolutely. Take your daily and go hammer on her. That's awesome.
Yeah. There's lots of times where, or there'd be some times where somebody would have to leave their rig, say, in a town 2 hours away that there's a rally, and hop back with somebody else and then go back the next weekend and fix it or whatever. But lots of times my parents, they would go to Calgary or they'd go to Spokane or something like that with their daily driver and race it and drive back. And
that's crazy. That's dedication and just like having a completely new level of in your rig, right? You're like, oh yeah, that's fine. It's 13 hours there and back. It's a 4-hour race.
Exactly.
She'll be fine.
Right? So,
I just did ball joints. It'll be okay.
And a lot of those races, back in those days, they're what we call play days. So they had sand drags and an obstacle course, which is very similar to what you guys are doing. Just not quite as rough, not with the tire. They had some tire pits, stuff like that in there, but just not as big and nasty as what you guys are doing. So
it's a natural. It's a natural progression of the sport. Like what we were just saying, it's crazy to think that your buddy that's got 42-inch tires, he'd be in the small tire class. Yeah. You know what I mean? However many years ago, it's 40s. What do you need anything bigger? Well, now Mickey Thompson's got a 58.
Yep.
Sure. What the hell do you need a 58 for? Because someone else is going to probably make a 60.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I was talking with a friend a week or two ago, and he's in the early 90s. There was actually a really good desert racing series here in Kamloops, and it wasn't huge. We might have 20 or 30 vehicles out, but it was such a fun time because everybody, even guys are coming up from Washington State and stuff like that, they're up there just to have fun. Everybody wants to win, right? But you'd pull in, and if something's wrong in your vehicle, there'd be 5 guys hopping onto your truck or your buggy to fix it. kind of idea. And it might be your number one competitor as well.
There's truly something to be said about the motorsports community, and not necessarily like the top racer guys, like when you start getting into like sponsored race teams and that sort of thing, but the actual off-road community in general. I can tell you this, and this is what I love so much about the passion that we have and what we do and why we enjoy it is you could be in any town or city across Canada. And if your rig is broken, all you have to do is drive around till you see a partially finished rig outside in someone's driveway.
Yep.
You go over, you knock on that door, guaranteed that guy's going to help you.
Yep. Exactly.
And that's just, and like going back, like you got 5 people thrashing on a rig to help them get going so they can finish the race. And that's your number one competitor pulling a wrench for you. It's a camaraderie of people that just love and appreciate the sport, and just to see it continue to grow is what everyone wants.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's been lots of times where it's broken and then somebody else breaks and they've had 2 different issues. So the guy, here, take my tire and rim or take my whatever and put it onto your vehicle. I'm not going anywhere kind of idea.
Yeah, 100%. Even at Jensen's Motopalooza, there was buddy wrecked his tire, completely shot his tire. I need one. So buddy, other guy takes one off of his race truck. Here you go. Have it. But he was also racing. So then he's running 3 different tires on his, but he's just helping the other guy. Yeah, sure. Take mine.
Yep.
I don't need it.
Yeah. And I've seen it in Ontario and with the buggy guys. A buggy guy might blow an engine and the other guy says, I got one back in my garage, but I'm a 2-hour each way trip. He goes, I'll start heading back. You start pulling it out. So 3 or 4 guys helping him pull out the engine. The guy his friend goes back to his shop and lends him an engine. It's a 2-hour drive each way and stuff like that. So that's one of the things I love about the 4x4 community, like you said, and even just regular wheelers for the most part.
I think there is another universal affiliation or affinity of group of people that are just drawn to a specific thing that you can just, you wheel. We're good. We're buddies.
Yeah,
absolutely. What do you need? Like
it's like when you see somebody out in front of a grocery store and you see them hop out of their Jeep or whatever, and you start talking to them and the wife is, oh my God, let's just go. And then finally 10, 15 minutes later, you go into the store and she's like, who's that? And he's like, I don't know.
Yeah,
he drives a Jeep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or just someone that I don't remember their name, but I remember that they had a blue 67 Chevelle.
I'm horrible that way. I've got a few people in my phone as Red XJ.
Yeah, like when I was first starting to do these race series and stuff like that, that's how I was labeling the vehicles, is just because I didn't know everyone's name at that point. Right. So I was like, all right, I'm going to call that one Green Cage. Yeah.
Got to do what you got to do, right?
That's right. And that's funny. So it's all kind of worked out. And now it's throwing me off because every time I'm trying to figure if I haven't changed the name of a folder, I was like, where the hell was that video? I can't find that video. Right? Oh, that Green Cage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what are you using for cameras and your drone?
So the cameras, I'm just a pleb when it comes to cameras for the most part. I'm just a standard.
Okay.
Yeah. Point and shoot cell phone guy at the end of the day for the most part. If it captures something, that's all you need. There's so many people that I idolize and I look up to that just have truly remarkable gear that they run, like Nikon or Canon and all that kind of stuff, like DSLRs and that. McKinnon, he's Canadian. He's got a massive YouTube following, like 5.4 million. And just his gear is next level, but I take my stuff into some pretty precarious places, but yeah. So yeah, as for standard camera stuff, I generally just run off my cell phone. I used to have a Note 20 and now I've got the S22 just because they always have great cameras. So I like to use those. And then for in-car stuff or whatever, obviously GoPros. So I've got a couple GoPros, and then I've got a 360-degree Fusion GoPro, so it does the full world. Just one camera will just do everything. And then as for the drone, I've been pretty hard on drones. I've been pretty tough on drones. The Cold Lake caused a major fatality of one, which is super disappointing because I ended up losing like 70% of my footage because it corrupted the card. So like when they were doing the J-hook, like I was right on the hood of the truck when it's coming down. And yeah, so I was super excited. I was like, oh, it's going to be great. And then ended up catching a rock and breaking the prop off. And then they came down and landed on it. But for drones, I use actually a Skydio 2. It's a autonomous drone, very heavy on software. So it's self-flying. It's got 6 HD cameras that it uses to see. Wow. And then I can basically just press a button and tell it, follow me from the front, and it'll fly around trees and up and around, and it'll stay on the front.
Yeah.
It's definitely handy when it comes into the racing end of it and trying to fly through the trees with those guys. So like I'm maneuvering, I know that there's going to be a tree there, but I don't really have to pay that much attention to it because it's going to see it and it's going to fly around it for me.
Right.
Yeah. So
That definitely helps out for sure.
yeah,
It's funny how you're talking about the cell phones, because cell phone technology these days is incredible. What you can do with a cell phone.
like that phone shoots 8K. I don't even have anything that I can view. I don't even know what that is.
Exactly.
Can you even see 8K? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, the cell phone, I generally use the cell phone because they're waterproof. I keep them in my pocket, and being in Saskatchewan, all we've got is mud and trails and rocks. So I'm gonna drop it in the water. I'm gonna fall down. Yep. I'm gonna do that sort of thing. A DSLR is as beautiful and great film as you can get with them. That's a heavy investment for a guy that breaks stuff 2 to 5 times a year.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that you say that you use the cell phone, because I've been playing around a bit more with mine, and I've been really surprised in what it does do for photos and videos.
It's
I knew remarkable. It was always good with photos, but video I've been playing around, and it's like pretty impressive.
Yeah, they are. They're remarkable. And sound quality generally is fairly decent as well.
Yeah.
And honestly, like so many big name tubers and all that kind of thing, that's all they use is they'll have their iPhone 13 Pro or whatever it is, or they've got their Samsung. And it's because it's so simple to just reach in your pocket, press a button, and it's there. It's instantly recording. It's not setting up your camera, putting it on the gimbal, doing this. It's press a button, you're good to go. Yeah. You can definitely see in some like high-end professional stuff is, yeah, obviously that's a very expensive set of gear that they're using. But for YouTube, for people that are just doing whatever, just cell phones, 100%. That's all you need. That's all you need.
I actually got rid of my DSLR a number of years ago. It was getting a bit dated, but I found that I never used it. I might bring it along with me, but I always had my cell phone with me, and it's always sitting in the console or in the slot or whatever. And it's just easy to quick and grab, and you don't have to worry about putting on a lens and all that other stuff. And it's not heavy.
Like,
it's
exactly. And yeah, like a good friend of mine, Kyle Mainville, like he's a fantastic YouTuber, and he just shoots remarkable stuff, and his photos are always on point, and everything's just amazing. But yeah, he's a big DSLR guy, and I was like, I can't. Like he's got a Pelican case, a waterproof Pelican case that he puts in the back of his side by side, and he's going through mud. He's going through. I was like, you're crazy, dude. You're crazy, but that's the deal.
Well, each to their own, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the last question we ask every guest is, what Canadian would you like to hear on 4x4 Canada podcast?
It's interesting because you never hear them talk. Like watching their videos, watching their YouTube channel, you generally never hear them talk. But I think Bill and Lizzie Krekowitz from Four Low BC, their YouTube channel. I think if you could get Wild Bill on here, it'd be interesting to hear him because, yeah, he's definitely a character.
Definitely, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
But it'd be great to hear talk. Like I say, depending on the genre, but Kyle Mainville is another one from Mainville ATV and Off Road. They dabble and do absolutely everything. Him and his wife, Cass, they're great. They're great people.
Yep. Beautiful. Yeah, definitely have to look more into the Four Low guys. For sure.
Yeah.
With Bill.
Yeah,
there,
Bill and Liz. So yeah, Four Low BC, they've got a really great YouTube channel. And it's basically just ambient sounds, rocks, and rigs. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of times where I find myself, I'll try and replicate one of the Four Low's videos. No one wants to hear me talk. You know what I mean? They're not there to hear me mouth off in front of the camera and be a personality. They're there to see someone wreck their rig. So show the rig.
Yeah, awesome. Once again, we're talking to Darien from PistNbroke, and he's got a YouTube channel, PistNbroke, and you can check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Definitely worth checking out his YouTube channel, as we talked about lots of great extreme 4x4 racing, as well as some four-wheeling in northern Saskatchewan, which apparently there is four-wheeling in northern Saskatchewan.
Yeah, there's a little bit. We're slowly getting there. We're not quite the rest of the provinces, but we're building ourselves up.
Yeah. Awesome, Darien. I really appreciate you coming on board, and it was a great conversation.
Wes, you have no idea how excited I was to come on here and have a talk with you. And I'm super excited that you reached out and that we're able to make this happen. And I look forward to possibly getting on once more in the future.
Definitely. You betcha. Awesome. I appreciate it.